The spill that woke the world? It was just another quiet morning in downtown Los Angeles. The streets buzzed with tired footsteps, impatient car horns, and the low murmur of city life coming awake. Among the crowd, a man in a worn hoodie, dark jeans and a calm expression moved slowly toward a local coffee shop, tucked between a flower stall and a bookstore. Nobody gave him a second look. He didn't expect them to. That's how he liked it. Quiet, unnoticed. He had just finished a late-night shoot and hadn't slept more than 2 hours. All he wanted was a hot cup of coffee before disappearing into the day. He reached for the door of the shop, pushed it gently, and walked inside. The barista behind the counter was young, tall, and brimming with the kind of arrogance that came with viral fame. His name was Zeke. His videos of mocking customers had gotten millions of views. He was clever with his insults, and his followers loved it. The cafe owner, desperate for attention and foot traffic, looked the other way. Some people came just to get roasted. But not everyone knew what they were walking into. Keanu Reeves stepped up to the counter. He glanced at the chalkboard menu, then gave a tired smile. "I'll have a black coffee. No sugar, no cream." Zeke didn't look up. He was on his phone. He sighed loudly. "Anything else, Grandpa?" Keanu paused, unsure if he'd heard right. "Just the coffee, thank you." Zeke finally looked up. Something about the man's face seemed familiar, but he couldn't place it. The hoodie and tired eyes threw him off. "You look like someone who lives in his car," Zeke said, laughing. A couple of other customers looked over. Some chuckled. Others froze, recognizing the man in front of them. But Keanu said nothing. He nodded and handed over a $5 Zeke bill. Zeke took the bill, made a big show of inspecting it, then tossed it back on the counter. "We don't take money from hobos," he said. He reached for a cup, filled it halfway, then, without warning, flung it across the counter. The hot coffee hit Keanu's shirt, splashing across his chest and dripping onto the floor. The cafe went silent. You could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the back. Keanu didn't yell. He didn't move. He simply looked down at his soaked shirt, then back up at Zeke. His voice, when he spoke, was calm but firm. "Was that necessary?" Zeke smirked. "Oh, don't act all hurt. Go get a real job." One woman at a nearby table gasped. Her eyes had gone wide. She whispered to her friend, "That's Keanu Reeves." But Zeke laughed louder. "Keanu Reeves, please, that guy's rich. What would he be doing here dressed like that?" Keanu looked around. Some people were pulling out their phones. Others lowered their heads, uncomfortable. Still, Keanu didn't raise his voice. He reached for a napkin, wiped his hands, then said, "You never know who you're speaking to, but it always matters how you treat people." And with that, he turned and walked out. The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving behind silence, shame, and confusion. Outside, the cool morning air hit his wet shirt, but he didn't seem to mind. He walked to his motorcycle, parked just across the street, and slowly removed his hoodie. Underneath was a white t-shirt soaked with coffee, but his face remained peaceful. A teenage boy passing by looked at him, his eyes widening. "Wait, are you Keanu Reeves?" Keanu nodded gently. "Yeah." The boy stared. "That guy? He threw coffee on you." Keanu gave a small smile. "It's okay. Sometimes people are going through things we don't understand. But it wasn't okay. Not for long." Within minutes, the video started spreading. A woman in the cafe had recorded the entire scene. She posted it with the caption, "Barista humiliates kind man. Didn't know it was Keanu Reeves." Within an hour, the video was everywhere. The comments were flooded. Some called for the cafe to shut down. Others defended Zeke, saying it was probably just another prank. But one thing was clear, the world had noticed. Meanwhile, Zeke was still behind the counter, laughing it off. "That guy, please, I'll go viral again, watch." But as he scrolled through his phone and saw the video exploding online, his smile began to fade. One comment pinned to the top read, "You humiliated the most humble man on earth. This won't end well." Keanu, however, had no interest in revenge. He spent the afternoon at a children's hospital he visited quietly once a month. He read to the kids, made them laugh, and gave away toys. None of them asked about coffee, or baristas or viral videos. They just smiled, and that was all he wanted. But something else was coming, something no one expected. A journalist who had seen the video reached out to Keanu's manager. She wanted to write an article, not about the coffee, but about kindness. She asked if Keanu would be willing to speak, just once, about why he didn't react with anger. Keanu agreed, but only if he could tell the story in person at a local shelter where he used to volunteer. He wanted people to see where the real strength lived. As news spread, cameras began showing up, not outside Hollywood studios or film sets, but outside that same shelter. Reporters waited, fans gathered, and somewhere in the background, Zeke watched it all unfold from behind the cafe window, his hands shaking, the weight of regret starting to settle in his chest. And just when it seemed things were calming down, a new message appeared in the comments section of the viral video. It was anonymous. It said, "That coffee shop hides something worse than spilled drinks. You have no idea what he uncovered." Everyone paused. The attention shifted. What was hidden inside that cafe? What did Keanu know? And why had he walked in there that morning, alone? The secret behind the counter, as the sun dipped behind the Los Angeles skyline, the internet burned with curiosity. The video of Keanu Reeves being humiliated had already reached millions. Every platform, from TikTok to Reddit, was flooded with reactions, theories, and heated debates. Yet what drew even more attention wasn't just the incident. It was that strange anonymous comment at the bottom. "That coffee shop hides something worse than spilled drinks. You have no idea what he uncovered." People didn't know whether to dismiss it as a troll or dig deeper. Unfortunately for Zeke, someone chose the second option. Across town, in a small studio apartment, a young woman named Jessica stared at her laptop screen. She hadn't spoken to anyone from that cafe in almost a year. She used to work there, before she was suddenly let go without explanation. She had signed papers, told not to talk about company matters, but she had seen too much. And now, seeing the video of Keanu, something inside her stirred. It wasn't just about the coffee. It was about what was hidden in that back room. Meanwhile, Keanu sat in a quiet room at the shelter. The floor beneath him was old wood, scuffed and warm from years of footsteps. Kids ran around outside, their laughter echoing in the hallway. He sat with Marcus, an old friend and former counselor who had helped him when he volunteered years ago. Marcus leaned forward, his eyes filled with concern. "You okay, man? I saw the video." Keanu nodded slowly. "It's not about the coffee." Marcus tilted his head. "What do you mean?" Keanu sighed, glancing out the window. "The shop. I've been watching it for weeks. Not as an actor, but as someone who's seen what happens when no one's looking. Something is going on in that place. I didn't go there for coffee, Marcus. I went there to see what they'd do if they thought I was nobody." Marcus frowned. "You think it's a front?" Keanu nodded. "It's not just about disrespect. It's about what they think they can get away with, and how they treat people when there's no camera around. I needed to see it with my own eyes." Elsewhere, Zeke's world was beginning to shake. He had been called into a meeting with the cafe owner, Mr. Reynolds. The older man sat stiffly behind his desk in a small office above the shop. Papers were stacked high, and security monitors blinked quietly on the wall. Zeke tried to laugh, it off as usual, but the owner wasn't smiling. "Do you have any idea what kind of firestorm you've started?" Reynolds hissed, slamming a folder on the desk. "That man you humiliated is worth more than this entire building. And now reporters are sniffing around. People are asking questions. If you don't fix this, we're both finished." Zeke's voice cracked. "What do you mean, fix it? It's just a video?" "No, it's not just a video," Reynolds growled. "He's on to us." Zeke paused. "What? What do you mean?" The room grew still. The owner's voice dropped to a whisper. "There are things in this building that don't belong to me. Things that come in late at night and disappear before sunrise. and he's been seen outside, asking questions, talking to the woman who used to work here. We don't need more eyes on us. Zeke's blood turned cold. Are you saying? I'm saying, Reynolds cut in. You better make this right. Before he does. At that moment, Jessica hit send on an email addressed to a local journalist named Emilio Torres. She had included photos, taken months ago before she was fired. One showed a locked door in the back of the cafe with strange crates being wheeled in after hours. Another was a ledger filled with coded transactions. She didn't know what they meant, but she had always suspected something illegal was happening. Emilio, a seasoned reporter who had covered corporate scandals before, read the email twice. He leaned back, heart racing. He hadn't expected anything this big to fall into his lap on a Monday. He clicked on the video of Keanu again, watching the moment the coffee hit his chest. But this time, he didn't just see humiliation, he saw strategy. Calm, patience. He knew, Emilio whispered to himself. He knew exactly what he was doing. The next day, Keanu returned to the shelter, this time with a small film crew. He wasn't making a movie. He was telling a story. Standing beside Marcus, with children in the background playing and laughing, he began to speak. Sometimes the world looks at people and decides their worth based on their clothes, their job, or how much money they have. But kindness doesn't care about those things. Respect doesn't care. I walked into that coffee shop hoping they'd treat me like anyone else, and they did. But not in the way I hoped. His voice didn't waver. His words were simple, but they cut deep. Across the internet, clips of the speech spread like wildfire. People weren't just angry anymore, they were inspired. The focus shifted from outrage to purpose. The question wasn't, how could this happen? It became, what else has been happening that no one sees? Back at the cafe, business had plummeted. Empty tables sat untouched. The few who entered only did so to take pictures or confront Zeke. Reynolds watched the news on a tiny TV in his office. When he saw Keanu speaking at the shelter, he gritted his teeth and slammed his fist on the desk. He's turning this into something bigger, he muttered. This isn't just about coffee anymore. He reached for his phone and made a call. It's time. Move everything out of the back room tonight. Burn whatever's left. He can't find what we've been hiding. But they were already too late. Emilio had received a call from Jessica. She had more photos, and this time she had footage. Blurry, taken from behind crates, but clear enough to show men exchanging envelopes, whispering in the back room of the cafe. It was enough to spark an investigation. Keanu stayed silent through it all. He didn't boast, didn't post, didn't point fingers. Instead, he kept visiting the shelter. He brought meals, books, even a piano. Every time someone asked him why he hadn't fought back that morning, his answer was the same. When you fight darkness with more darkness, no one can see. But when you bring light, everything is revealed. As night fell again on Los Angeles, police cars began circling the block near the cafe. Plainclothes officers entered through the front door as customers pretended to sip their drinks. In the alley, another unit prepared to enter the back. The city didn't know it yet, but something big was about to happen. And while all of that unfolded, Zeke sat in the employee break room, staring at a printed photo of the man he had once mocked. The caption below it said, "He didn't react, because he didn't have to. Kindness always wins." Then the back door creaked open, and a voice, calm and unmistakable, echoed down the hall. "I think it's time we talked." Zeke turned pale. He looked up. Keanu Reeves had walked in, behind the door, beneath the mask. The air in the break room turned heavy, thick like fog before a storm. Zeke's throat tightened as he stared at the figure in the doorway. There stood Keanu Reeves, not as the soft-spoken man in a hoodie from the morning spill, but with a steady gaze that seemed to cut through silence itself. His posture wasn't threatening, but there was something about him that made the room feel smaller, tighter, like the truth had finally entered and was refusing to leave. Zeke stumbled to his feet. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice strained and unsure. Keanu didn't flinch. He stepped forward, letting the door shut softly behind him. I think it's time you told the truth. Not just about the coffee, but about what's really going on in this place. Zeke's mouth opened, then closed. 1,000 lies tried to form on his tongue, but none made it out. He looked down, suddenly aware of the choices that had led him to this moment. He had never expected to get caught. Never expected the world to turn its attention on a place he thought no one cared about. He wasn't the owner, yet somehow the weight of it all rested on his shoulders. Keanu sat down across from him. No camera crew, no reporters, just him. You still have a chance to make this right, he said quietly. But you have to start talking. For a long time, Zeke said nothing, but eventually, with a shaky breath, he began. The cafe isn't just a cafe, he confessed. It never was. Mr. Reynolds. He's not even the real owner. He manages it, sure. But the funding, the reason we never closed during the pandemic, that came from someone else. Someone powerful. Keanu listened closely, nodding slowly. What's in the back room? Zeke's hands trembled. Laundered money. Drugs sometimes. Not in huge amounts, but enough. Sometimes it's documents, fake IDs. Sometimes they come late at night and hand off bags that we never open. It's not just local. There's an entire network. And Reynolds, he's just the middleman. Keanu leaned back. And you? Zeke's face tightened with shame. I didn't ask questions, I just made jokes, insulted people, acted like a clown online. That's what they wanted. It kept the attention shallow. Viral videos, mockery, distractions. No one looked deeper. And I got paid more than a barista ever should? Keanu's voice lowered. Why humiliate me? Zeke's voice cracked. Because I thought you were just another tired man, someone I could use for laughs, and because, if they ever saw me acting soft or decent, I thought they'd cut me out. Keanu's expression softened, but his tone remained firm. What they cut out is your soul. Outside, the sound of tires crunching gravel filled the alley. Unmarked police vehicles began surrounding the building. Somewhere in the front, Reynolds was arguing with officers, trying to stall them with fake paperwork. Inside the break room, Zeke's breath quickened. You have to go, he whispered. They'll hurt you if they see you here. Keanu didn't move. You think I came in here without a plan? At that moment, the fire exit at the back of the break room swung open. Marcus stepped in, followed by Emilio, the journalist. Both wore hidden cameras on their shirts. Keanu turned to Zeke and said, You already told the truth. Now let the world hear it. Zeke's eyes widened. You recorded this? Keanu nodded. But only because you chose to speak, and now people will know. Outside, officers had forced their way through the front. The back room of the cafe, long sealed behind a reinforced steel door, was being pried open. Inside, crates lined the walls, bags of cash, fake documents, and folders with photographs and notes connecting multiple local businesses to a larger operation. The officers exchanged looks. This was bigger than expected. As chaos unfolded at the front of the cafe, Reynolds tried to escape through the back, but froze when he saw Keanu standing beside Zeke, with Emilio and Marcus behind them. The camera caught everything. Reynolds's face, his attempt to turn back, and the officers taking him into custody. Within the hour, the news exploded. Celebrities' calm exposes criminal network hidden behind viral coffee shop. Headlines poured in. Live footage from outside the cafe showed police seizing files, arresting handlers, and interviewing witnesses. But none of it compared to the viral moment when the audio clip of Zeke's confession, his voice trembling, admitting the truth, was aired on national news. People were stunned, not just because of the crimes, but because the man they had mocked, the man some called too quiet, had not only uncovered corruption, but done it with grace, with patience, with kindness. Meanwhile, Keanu returned to the shelter, refusing interviews. He smiled as the kids ran up to him with drawings, asking him to read them stories. He hadn't done this for fame. He had done it because he believed in dignity, in the strength of quiet resistance, in choosing compassion over confrontation. But even as the city took a deep breath and began processing the fall of the fake coffee empire, something still lingered. Late that night, Emilio sat at his desk, reviewing the footage again. He zoomed in on one particular folder recovered from the back room. There was a logo, barely visible, burned into the leather binding, a snake wrapped around a key. He paused, frowning. It wasn't just some local gang symbol. He had seen it before, in a report about missing journalists in Eastern Europe, in a case file tied to illegal surveillance equipment sold to powerful governments. He picked up his phone and called Keanu. "I think this goes deeper than we thought." Keanu's voice was steady on the other end. "I know." Emilio hesitated. "How much deeper?" Keanu walked into his garage where an old dusty suitcase sat in the corner. He opened it slowly, revealing old newspaper clippings, photos, and files that looked nothing like movie scripts. "I've been following this for years," he said. "But the snake, the key, this is the first time it's surfaced in the open." Emilio's voice turned serious. "Then we're not done." Keanu looked out the window at the moonlit street. Somewhere out there, a larger truth was still hiding. "No," he said quietly. "We're just getting started." The symbol and the silent vow. The air was cold and still in Keanu's garage. The overhead bulb flickered softly, casting long shadows across the dusty floor as he knelt beside the old suitcase. It had been years since he'd opened it. Tucked beneath, layers of newspaper clippings and fading Polaroids were memories buried so deep that even he sometimes tried to forget. This wasn't about movies. It wasn't about fame. It was about a promise he made long ago, in a different life, when the world still saw him as a rising actor, not the quiet guardian he had slowly become. His fingers hovered over a photograph, creased, edges torn, colors faded. It showed a young man in a black shirt standing beside a burned-down building. Behind him, charred wood and twisted steel told the story of a community that had once trusted the wrong people. The man in the photo was Keanu himself, 20 years younger. But his eyes hadn't changed. Even then they held the weight of knowing too much and saying too little. That building, once a shelter, had been a front, just like the café. It was supposed to be a safe place for troubled teens, but behind closed doors something darker had festered. Keanu had discovered it by accident while donating supplies. When he tried to report it, the story was buried. Witnesses vanished, records erased. The only thing left behind was a symbol, etched into the desk of the head administrator, a snake coiled around a key. Now, decades later, the same symbol had reappeared, hidden in the back room of the cafe where coffee was just a cover. Keanu stood slowly and closed the suitcase. The past hadn't come knocking. It had kicked down the door. Meanwhile, across town, Emilio Torres sat in his cluttered apartment, studying printouts of the cafe's surveillance footage. He had taken the frame showing the leather folder with the snake key emblem and enhanced it as much as possible. His research had led him to scattered mentions across dark web forums, whistleblower articles, and even foreign news clippings, all pointing to a covert network known only as Nexus Gray. It was believed to be a collection of wealthy individuals, politicians, and shadow financiers who operated under the radar, using fronts like small businesses to launder money, transfer information, and test manipulation techniques on the public. Emilio leaned forward, rereading an old note from a disappeared British journalist. "They don't need to hide in shadows, they wear them like suits. If you see the snake and the key, you're already too close." He swallowed hard and texted Keanu. "We need to meet, tomorrow early. Bring the suitcase." Keanu's reply came instantly. "Already on my way." The next morning, they met at a quiet pier just outside the city where fog rolled in off the water and the smell of salt clung to the air. Keanu arrived first, parking his motorcycle beneath a broken lamppost. He carried the suitcase with one hand and a flask of tea in the other. Emilio joined minutes later, clutching a folder of his own. They didn't shake hands. They just exchanged looks, deep, knowing, heavy with purpose. "How long have you been following this?" Emilio asked, flipping open his folder. Long enough to see people disappear without a sound, Keanu replied. But not long enough to stop it. Not yet. Emilio laid out photos of 3 other locations: a bookstore in Lisbon, a tea shop in Istanbul, and a gym in Sao Paulo. All had burned down under mysterious circumstances in the last 2 years. Witnesses described strange activity in the back rooms, odd deliveries at night, and most importantly, records of the snake key symbol found at each site. They're connected, Emilio said, and you just pulled the curtain back on one of their hubs. You think they'll let you walk away? Keanu gave a faint smile. I don't plan to walk away. Not until they do. Emilio frowned. This goes beyond one city. If we go forward, we'll be targets, not just you and me, anyone around us. Keanu looked out over the water, wind brushing through his hair. They already threw coffee in my face. All that did was reveal how small they are behind their noise. The real question is, how many others like Zeke are out there? Trapped, used, scared to speak. Emilio's eyes narrowed. What are you thinking? I want to find the next place, Keanu said. I want to walk in like I did before, dressed like no one. Let them judge me, let them try, and when they do, we expose them. Emilio was silent for a moment, watching the waves. Then he nodded. I'll dig deeper. Find the pattern. But Keanu, this time, don't go in alone. Keanu nodded, but his eyes said something else. Elsewhere, at a luxury high-rise downtown, a man in a black tailored suit watched news coverage of the café raid. He stood in front of a large window, sipping dark espresso. His expression was cold, unmoved. A woman entered behind him, her voice low and sharp. They've traced the folder. One of the crates was marked. They're getting closer. The man turned slowly. His tie bore a tiny silver pin, shaped like a snake wrapped around a key. Bring in the fixer, he said. The actor wants to play hero. Let's give him a new role. Back at the shelter, Keanu sat with Marcus and the children. His phone buzzed quietly in his pocket, but he ignored it. A little girl sat beside him, drawing something with colored pencils. He leaned over and smiled. What's that? He asked, gently. She held up a picture. It was him, standing with a cape, surrounded by stars and kids holding hands. Across the top, she had written, "You saved the nice people." Keanu's throat tightened. In that moment, the suitcases, the networks, the secrets, none of them mattered. What mattered was that someone felt safe, seen, protected. But the phone buzzed again. This time he checked it. A text from Emilio. Just one word. Run. Before I could move, the lights in the shelter went out. A black van screeched to a halt outside. Shadows moved at the windows. Marcus grabbed the children and pulled them into the back room. Keanu stood up slowly, breathing steady. The past had come knocking again, but this time it wasn't hiding behind coffee cups or clever insults. This time, it was here to silence him. The break of silence, the shelter went still, like the air before lightning strikes. Silence wrapped itself around the building, so thick it seemed to press against the walls. Keanu stood perfectly still in the dim glow of emergency lights that flickered once and then died. The children had been ushered into a secured room by Marcus, whose military past had taught him to move without panic. But even he knew, this wasn't like before. This wasn't some viral prank or paparazzi incident. The people coming weren't curious. They were trained. Keanu moved to the hallway, quiet as breath. The only sound was the soft squeak of old floorboards beneath his boots. He had been here many times before, delivering books, food, joy. But now the building he loved felt like a trap. He reached for the small emergency phone under the front desk. The line was dead. He cursed under his breath, something he rarely did. Then he reached inside his jacket and pulled out a small tracking key. He clicked it once. No sound. No vibration. But he knew Emilio would receive the signal. Outside, the black van's doors slammed open. 3 figures stepped out. Tall, silent, dressed in tactical black. Their movements were sharp, like razors cutting through the night. No names, no badges, just black gloves and unreadable eyes. One of them lifted a small device and scanned the building's heat signatures. A faint beep confirmed what they already suspected. Someone was inside. Someone they had been sent to extract or erase. Inside, Keanu ducked into the supply closet. He wasn't hiding. He was buying time. From the ceiling, he pulled down a bag he had stashed months ago, never truly knowing if he'd need it. Inside were 2 smoke pellets, a compact flashlight, and a device built by a friend in Eastern Europe. A frequency scrambler that could disable listening equipment and scramble short-range cameras for exactly 90 seconds. He whispered to himself, "Don't run. Reveal." Then he threw the first smoke pellet into the hallway. The corridor filled with a dense, choking mist. The front doors burst open. Boots hit the floor like thunder. Shadows raced down the hallway. Vision obscured. One of them turned on a thermal lens but was blinded by the frequency scrambler Keanu had dropped seconds earlier. Panic hit their formation. In the smoke, Keanu moved like a ghost. He didn't run far, just to the common room, where the ceiling had a weak panel he had noticed years ago. With quiet force, he pushed it upward and climbed into the crawl space. He needed them to believe he'd fled. Beneath him, muffled voices barked orders. Someone shouted, "He's not in the East Wing." But he was. Listening. Waiting. Then something happened that made his blood run cold. A voice, familiar, chilling, calm, echoed through a speaker in the leader's ear. "Pull back. Let him think he escaped. Phase 2 begins now." The team retreated without firing a shot. They vanished just as quickly as they had come. By the time Marcus peeked out with the kids, the van was already gone. Keanu climbed down from the crawl space, heart racing. This hadn't been an arrest. It had been a warning. They could have taken him. They chose not to. Why? Emilio answered that question the next day. He met Keanu at a rundown observatory outside the city, one of their fallback spots. There, in the cold wind and morning fog, he laid out the latest piece of the puzzle. "It's bigger than Nexus Gray," Emilio said, unfolding a large map with pins marked in red and blue. "The snake key symbol. It isn't just a brand. It's a flag." Keanu frowned. "A flag?" "Yes," Emilio said. "It represents something older, something buried in plain sight. Not just criminal networks, but influence, decision makers, people who build careers on secrets, and every time someone gets close, they let them fall, or they make them disappear." Keanu nodded, slowly. "They didn't take me because they're not finished with me." "Exactly," Emilio said. "You've become something they can't control but also can't destroy. Yet. They want to know what you'll do next." Keanu looked away, jaw tightening. "So let's give them something they never saw coming." Emilio hesitated. "Are you sure?" Keanu's voice was steady. "They built power by making people feel small, by silencing truth. We do the opposite." Over the next 3 days, Keanu and Emilio worked like men possessed. They reached out to former whistleblowers, anonymous sources, and people like Jessica, the barista who had once been forced out for asking the wrong questions. One by one, more voices joined them. Janitors, assistants, former drivers. People who had never been heard because they didn't wear suits or sit on boards. They told stories of rooms that didn't exist on blueprints, servers that connected to foreign banks, threats delivered through subtle glances. Keanu compiled every voice, every piece of truth, into a single documentary. No names, no credits. Just voices. Pain, honesty, light. And he called it Behind the Counter. They released it online at midnight. No trailers, no studio logos. Within 3 hours, it had over 1 million views. By morning, it was being translated into 20 languages. It didn't just go viral, it erupted. The public response was overwhelming. Protests began forming outside known Nexus-affiliated businesses. Law enforcement agencies that had once looked the other way started opening internal investigations. And perhaps most shockingly, a former senator stepped forward with his own story, one that included blackmail, secret deals, and the same snake key symbol. But then came the twist that no one, not even Keanu, was prepared for. In the middle of the media storm, a message was delivered to Keanu's private email. It was short, just one line. "You were never just a witness. You're one of us." Attached was an old security photo. It showed Keanu as a young man, walking out of the ruins of the shelter that had burned down all those years ago. But standing beside him, smiling, was the same man from the high-rise, the one who gave the order to pull back. The timestamp was real. The photo had never been seen before. And the implication was terrifying. Had Keanu been part of Nexus Gray and not even known it? The forgotten oath. The sun had not yet risen over Los Angeles. The city still slept beneath its blanket of streetlights and silence. But inside Keanu's home, the past was wide awake. The photo sat on the table before him like a ghost with its hand on his shoulder. He stared at it for hours, not blinking, not moving. The image, grainy but unmistakable, showed him beside a man whose face had haunted news clips over the last week. A face now connected to crimes, manipulation, and power twisted into darkness. But in the photo, they weren't enemies. They were standing together, younger, unsuspicious, as if they had shared something, a purpose, a secret. The man beside him, now known only by aliases, the architect, Mr. Riven, the director, was smiling, hand resting lightly on Keanu's shoulder. It was the smile that unnerved him most, not because it was sinister, but because it looked proud. Keanu's breath slowed. He tried to remember. The old shelter had burned when he was barely in his 20s. It had been a safe place once, or so he believed. Back then, he was just starting his career, visiting charities, funding small programs with what little he had. He recalled walking those halls carrying boxes, laughing with kids. But there were gaps, shadows in his memory. Nights where things didn't quite add up. People who came and went without names. Meetings in offices he didn't remember entering, and that man, always somewhere nearby. He picked up the photo, turned it over. A date was scribbled in faint ink. October 7th, 1991. He felt a sharp pang in his chest. That was the day after a fire had broken out in the shelter. 4 people had died. No one had been charged. The cause had never been determined. Just forgotten. Swept away. But not by him. Not anymore. By the time Keanu arrived at Emilio's apartment, the journalist was already pacing, notes scattered across the table like puzzle pieces in a storm. He looked up, eyes bloodshot, and held up a document. "You're not crazy," Emilio said. "I cross-referenced this man, this Riven, with old humanitarian registries. Before he became a ghost, he worked as an advisor to multiple shelters, clinics, even education startups. Always in low-income areas, always helping, and always walking away before they burned, shut down, or were absorbed by shell companies. He disappears, and then, boom. Nexus Gray moves in." Keanu nodded, slowly. "He wasn't watching me. He was grooming me." Emilio's voice dropped. "Maybe even more. Maybe testing you." Keanu clenched his fists. "Testing me for what?" "Loyalty," Emilio replied. "Or something worse. Obedience." The word struck hard. Keanu had spent his life trying to live with intention, with kindness, but now he had to face the possibility that somewhere, deep in the past, someone had tried to use him, to turn him into a silent pawn in a game he never agreed to play. "There's only one way to answer this," Keanu said. "I need to talk to him." Emilio froze. "You want to meet Riven?" "No cameras, no microphones, just me and him. You could die. I could also live with myself." The meeting was set in a place Riven chose, an abandoned concert hall on the edge of the city. Once beautiful, now hollow. Its glass had shattered long ago and vines crept through cracks in the walls. But the stage remained, polished, untouched. Keanu entered alone. The air inside tasted of dust and memory. He walked down the aisle slowly, eyes scanning the shadows, and then from the far side of the stage he appeared, Riven, older now. Silver hair swept back, posture elegant, eyes sharp as knives. He wore a simple suit, no tie, no mask. Just the face of a man who had lived in the margins of power long enough to forget what fear felt like. "You came," Riven said, his voice rich and calm. "You sent the photo," Keanu replied. "You knew I would." Riven nodded. "You were always curious, always moral. It's what made you the perfect candidate." Keanu's jaw tightened. "Candidate for what?" "For the mirror," Riven said simply. "People like us. We reflect the world. They see themselves in us, that's the power. And we used it. Once." Keanu took a step forward. "I never joined you." "Not officially," Riven admitted. "But you were there, watching, learning. And whether you knew it or not, you carried pieces of us with you. Every story you told, every moment of silence you gave. You became a symbol. Just not the one we expected." Keanu narrowed his eyes. "You wanted me to be silent." Riven smiled faintly. "No, we wanted you to speak when it suited us. Influence is louder than orders. But somewhere along the way, you chose your own words." Keanu's heart pounded. "So that's it? You raised me like a lab experiment and now you want to confess?" "Not confess," Riven said, stepping into the light. "Offer." Keanu stared. "What?" "This world is breaking," Riven said. "Chaos is winning. Nexus Gray was built not to profit, but to control the chaos, to balance it. We shape narrative. We decide when the public breathes and when it holds its breath. And you, Keanu, could help us again." The silence stretched. Then Keanu laughed, softly, painfully. "You don't understand anything, do you?" Riven's eyes flickered. Keanu stepped onto the stage, feet echoing. "You think control is strength. You think people need to be managed, fooled, filtered. But what they need is someone to believe in them when no one else does. Not because of some grand design, but because it's right." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small device. "What's that?" Riven asked. "The future," Keanu said. Then he pressed the button. Lights hidden in the ceiling clicked on. The sound of applause roared through speakers. Behind the walls, panels opened to reveal a dozen witnesses, former victims, journalists, whistleblowers, watching from concealed balconies. Marcus, Emilio, Jessica, even the boy from the coffee shop. "We all heard you," Keanu said. "And now the world will too." Riven's expression faltered for the first time. You tricked me," Keanu shook his head. "No. You tricked yourself. You believed the world would never fight back." Outside the concert hall, live feeds were already streaming to major networks. Every word Riven had spoken was now public. Every admission, every plan. Nexus Gray, for the first time, was exposed not by weapons but by words. The law came swiftly after. International warrants, seized accounts, political resignations. But more importantly, a shift in how people thought about power. Silence was no longer safety. It was surrender. And people chose not to surrender anymore. Months later, Keanu returned to the shelter. It had been renovated, painted, filled with light. Children laughed in every corner. In the main hallway, a new mural had been painted. It showed a man standing quietly, holding a coffee cup in one hand, a key in the other, and a snake curled harmlessly at his feet. Above him, in bright letters, were the words, "He didn't raise his voice. He raised the truth." Keanu stood there for a long time, watching, listening. The world still spun in chaos. It always would. But now, he knew, so would kindness.